Hello and happy Valentine's Day. If you're new here, my name's Kelsey and I'm so glad you could be here today. For today, I thought that it could be fun to read some vampire novels in honor of Valentine's Day because, in my opinion, vampires and Valentines is like a perfect match. So, as always, get a snack, get cozy, and get ready to enjoy these vampy Valentine's Day vibes. So today is the day that we get to start our first book for this video, and I'm really excited. My dog's excited too. He's right here with me just below the camera. And our first book is going to be Carmilla by Sheridan DeFanu. This is a classic vampire novel. It actually was written a few decades before Dracula was written, so it's said to inspire Dracula, which is really cool. And I thought it was the perfect book to start off this video. It's just a little novella, and I'm excited to dive in. So let's do that. Okay, so as far as I can tell with the plot so far, basically this young woman lives in this kind of like castle with her dad and her like governesses slash like nurses, something along those lines. And it starts off by her telling her kind of some like memories she has from her. It starts off with her telling some of her like memories she has from her childhood and throughout her life that may have to do with vampires. And then this carriage gets into a crash outside of their castle, and this young woman is ill, and so her mother decides to leave her at the castle to recover while she continues her journey. And that is where we are at currently. So nothing too crazy, but maybe we'll see a vampire soon. it is the next day. Don't mind my dog in the background. He's playing with his toy and doing whatever. But I actually ended up finishing Carmilla yesterday, so I read all of it in one day, which I was not expecting to do, but it actually goes by pretty fast. I know that I kind of described what I have read so far yesterday, and now that I've read it, I thought that I could just kind of give more clarification on that and what this book is about. So basically, our main character is Laura, right? That's her name. Yeah, our main character is Laura, and she lives in a castle in the middle of the forest with her dad and her, like, governesses, nursemaids, something like that. But she only considers, like, her true companion to be her father, which I find really weird because a little bit of, like, kind of classism or, like, othering a little bit there, that she doesn't consider her governesses companions. Kind of weird. But basically, there is a carriage crash that happens outside of their castle, and a young woman who was in the carriage named Carmilla ends up staying at their castle to recover and becoming friends with Laura. And they start to notice that Carmilla has some weird habits, and Laura starts to experience nightmares and other things like that. And that's basically the premise of the book. Just basically a classic vampire novel. And this was really good. I rated it 3.5 stars because I feel like that's fair, especially with older books like this. I feel like older horror novels, they're kind of difficult because they are such classics and you understand why they are so loved. And there are scenes that are, you know, that stand out and are very descriptive, and it's like, whoa, like that's good, that's intense. But then there are also other parts where it's just kind of like, it's just like a little gander. It's not scary, it's not creepy, it's not anything, because the kind of threshold back then was different than now, and what we consider scary and what we consider to be, you know, frightening is different, you know what I mean? So I think 3.5 stars is fair because I do like this book. It was fun. This is definitely the perfect book to cuddle up with and read in one sitting, like I did. It's the perfect book to do that with. So I did like it, even though I only gave it 3.5 stars though. I was just telling my husband too, I feel like I am now a hardcore fan of Carmilla. Like, I think it's fair to give it 3.5 stars. It was good. I enjoyed it. It's better than just above average, but it wasn't like absolutely spectacular, but I think I'm a hardcore fan because it's a classic and it's good, and I understand not the hype, I guess, but I understand. I like this book. So yeah, I'm a Carmilla fan. Carmilla stan, if you will. Also, I forgot to mention, I just filmed that whole thing and watched it back, but I forgot to mention something that I feel like is pretty important to this book, and also what makes it so kind of cool as well. And I heard somebody online when I was like looking this up after reading it say something along these lines, and I totally agree. Carmilla is not romantic in the least bit. It is gothic, but it is not a romantic gothic novel. What it is, however, is a sapphic gothic novel. Not romantic at all. Sapphic, yes. And that's also part of what makes this so hardcore, especially for coming out in, like, I think 1872. Yep, 1872. Yeah, that's also part of what makes this so good, in my opinion, too, is that it's pretty hardcore for the time that it came out, in that sense. So, on one hand, you have a bit of kind of, like I said, classism a little bit, because, you know, the kind of help aren't considered companions, but then at the same time, it's sapphic. But yeah, good book though. Good book. I also too, because of this plastic covering on it, because I got all the physical books I'm reading in this video from the library, I feel like it reflects the light and it's kind of hard to see the cover. So if you can't see the cover clearly here, I will put a picture of the cover on the screen so you can see what it actually looks like. But yeah, that's what I have to say about this one. Really great start to the video. And I would recommend. It was really good, and I definitely see how it inspired Dracula as far as what we think of when we think of vampires and kind of their physical descriptions and that kind of stuff. Heavily was inspired by this book, and it's pretty obvious. So that's this book. So the next book that we will be reading in this video is Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I actually started this book on my lunch today. I only read about 8 pages, but so far I really like it. I really like the reading. The writing, not the reading. It is definitely, so far seems to be my kind of book. It's descriptive, and just seems really fun. It's got some historical fiction elements. I can't really tell you much about what's happening in it right now. The only thing that I can really tell you is that our main character is Nena, and she lives on this ranch with her family, and she has a best friend named Nestor, who her family now doesn't want her to be as close of friends with because they're getting older and he's a boy and she's a girl, and it's kind of considered improper, and that really upsets her. So she's trying to hold on to that friendship. And also they are kind of into debunking the kind of myths that exist, the kind of, as she says, the stories that their abuelas told them to keep them from getting too far away from the house after dark. So that's kind of, she likes kind of debunking these tales, or so it seems so far, and that's all we really know. But it's really good so far, the 8 pages I've read. I don't think I'm going to film me reading some of this tonight because I have some other plans, but I will update you sometime soon, and I also will put a picture of the cover on the screen if you can't see this one clearly as well, so you can see that. So stay tuned for my next update on this book. Alright, so it has been multiple days since I last filmed. I was planning on filming a little bit more, but it's been crazy. So I thought I would sit down and update you on our second book, Vampires of El Norte. I am now like 60% of the way through the book, I believe, something like that. Let's see here. I have read 204 out of 363 pages. So yeah, I'm like about 60% of the way through. So yeah, I think in my last clip I said something about this book that is not true. After reading further, I realized I had made a mistake. So the characters in this book, they do not like debunking the myths they grew up with. They actually just believe them, and obviously grew up around them, and so when they're younger and they're out late at night, they think often of these tales that Abuela told them because, you know, it's dark, it's kind of creepy, it's kind of scary. So they're not trying to debunk them. In fact, they actually hope that they're real, or at least one of them is real on this particular night when they go out. And on that particular night when they go out, hoping that one of these myths are true to change their futures, they run into a monster. And this monster changes the course of both of their lives. And yeah, that's kind of the premise of this book. Not only is this dealing with vampires, obviously, of like the monstrous kind, as far as like what you would think of vampires, but it also deals with vampires as far as they have Anglo settlers who are trying to take over the land, which I guess you could say are vampires too. So yeah, so they're dealing with that alongside these other creatures, these other monsters. The creatures are very creepy, very well done. I love the kind of relationships between all of our characters. I feel like each character is different. Each character has their own personality, which I very much so appreciate. And yeah, I've still got a good amount left, but I'm getting there, and I'm really liking this one so far. Although I will say, I'm not liking it as much as I thought I would. I thought this one was going to be like perfect. I thought that I was going to love this book, and I like it, but I don't know. There's just something about it that it's not quite to the level I thought it was going to be. But that doesn't mean it's bad. But yeah, so I'm going to read a little bit of this today, and I'm hoping to finish this soon because I have one more book to read from the library and I'm running out of time. Okay, so it's been several more days and I finished Vampires of El Norte. I enjoyed this book. I rated it 4.25 stars. And I think what I really enjoyed about this book was the idea of the vampires. They're described more as like a creature or kind of a cryptid. And their physical descriptions and everything in this book are so creepy and so well done. And once you get towards the ending and you get to see even more of them, it was just well done. And not only, like I said before, I think, not only do you have the actual vampires, but then you also have basically the Anglo settlers that are kind of vampires in the story as well, in a way. So it was very interesting to kind of compare the two. And the book itself compares the two. I'm not going to get into all of that because I don't want to spoil the book or anything like that, but it was just really interesting to me towards the ending and the way that things are described. I feel like that might not make much sense, but I don't want to accidentally spoil anything. So I'm just going to stop there. I really enjoyed the main characters in this book. They were fun, and I was really rooting for them throughout the whole book, and rooting for their relationship. So this was really good, and I really enjoyed that it had some historical fiction elements to it, because I also love historical fiction, and learning more about what was going on in what is now Texas at this time was very interesting. And like I said, the vampires themselves were really interesting. The writing, I love the writing of this book. Really well done. So yeah, solid book. And another great read. Okay, so that brings us to our third and final book of this video. And that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I started this one today, and so far I'm actually really liking it. I'm about 25 pages in, so I can't tell you like too much about it, but basically our main character is Patricia, and Patricia is a housewife slash like stay-at-home mom who is a part of a book club with other housewives, and they have this kind of monotonous suburban life, and dealing with the struggles of being a mom and being a wife and just the craziness that is life. And I'm pretty sure there's a vampire in their midst or something like that, but I haven't gotten to that part yet. All I know is that Patricia's our main character. She's a housewife. She's part of a book club with other housewives, and that's about it. But yeah, I'm actually really liking this, and I'm liking the way that it's written. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's reminding me a little bit of Stephen King in the way that it's kind of written. It takes place in the 80s. This is also the same author that wrote My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I've not read, but I've seen the movie. But yeah, so this takes place in the 80s, which is fun. And yeah, there's gonna be a vampire at some point in this, and I'm excited to keep reading it. Also, I feel like I should have mentioned that what makes this so fun is that they are these housewives that are slaying vampires. The author himself, in his author note at the beginning of the book, says that he really liked the idea of basically, he says, I wanted to pit Dracula against my mom, because his mom was kind of the same. She was like a housewife, which is kind of so fun. Yeah, so there are these women that they're housewives, their lives are crazy, there's constantly things going on, like they're just like nonstop go in their lives. They don't have any free time, basically. And then they start slaying vampires, is I guess kind of the premise of it. Or I think one vampire. I think there's only one, but maybe there could be more. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't gotten there so far. But that's part of why I'm liking it so much, is because it's like taking these women out of their kind of monotonous lives, and they're taking on yet another responsibility of slaying vampires, which I think is just so fun. So, yeah, I just thought that was important to note too, about this. it's been several days, and I am here to update you on the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I only have 50 pages left of this book, so the plan is to finish this tonight and then update you on my thoughts a little later. So far, this is my favorite book that I've read for this video. It just really is fun and gory and really has become almost like a feminist novel. It's very feminist, and I just wasn't expecting that, and I'm really enjoying it. I also wanted to elaborate a little more on what I meant by it reminds me of Stephen King. And what I meant by that is that this author, you can tell that he really knows what he's doing and he's good at writing, but there's also something casual about the way that he writes, and I feel like Stephen King's kind of the same way. Like, he's just such a master, right? And his books are good, you know that his writing is good, but there's still this kind of laid back, kind of casual nature to the way that he writes. Like, he doesn't take himself too seriously, he just writes in a way that's fun and laid back, like I said, and that's kind of what this book reminds me of. It's just very fun and very good writing, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. I don't know if that makes any sense, but if you know like what I mean when it comes to Stephen King, it's kind of the same with this book. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. Like I said, it is also turning into a bit of a feminist novel, and not only are these women working towards slaying, a vampire, but they're also working towards creating a safe neighborhood for their children despite what their husbands think. And yeah, and I'm just gonna say some of the men in this book drive me crazy. Like, I don't like them, and it's really interesting because this book is written by a man, but in my opinion, he does a very good job of showing the perspective of the women and some of the ways that their husbands or the other men interact with them just like makes me so aggravated, and I don't know if it's ways in which other men would notice as much as you would as a woman. Another thing to note about this book is that I was wrong, and I feel like that's kind of been a common theme throughout this book. I keep speaking about the books before actually knowing them enough to be speaking about them. So this does not primarily take place in the 80s. It starts in the late 80s, but the vast majority of the book actually takes place in the 90s. I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to finish this and then update you on my rating and any final thoughts that I have. we have officially made it to the end of the very last book of this video, which is not a surprise because I was talking about finishing this book earlier today in the last two clips, something like that. But I thought that I would kind of wrap up this book and my thoughts before we move on to wrapping up the whole video. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. This was so good. Like I said, very fun, very gory and intense. That's another thing I didn't mention earlier today, is that there are definitely scenes or like parts in this book where like you feel yourself holding your breath because it's so intense, right? Or like you're like kind of just hoping that the characters make it out alive. Very well done, very solid horror novel for sure. I love the characters. I love that the women, they all have very different personalities and come from different backgrounds, and yet they're all friends. Obviously it takes place in the South, so you're dealing with Southern hospitality and all of the kind of niceties that these women put on. And so you're seeing that versus when Daedra does come knocking on these Southern housewives' doors, and what are they going to do next, especially when they're also dealing with all the other things that they deal with in life, and also some pretty terrible men that they also have to deal with in their lives. This was really good. It was really good. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, I mean, I loved it as a horror novel. I feel like I just keep saying the same things over and over, but I both loved it as a horror novel, and also it made me feel not inspirational, that's not the right word, but you know when like you read a really good book with characters that you love and you just feel really connected to them, and watching them persevere, or watching them like, I don't know how to explain it, how that just like, you just finish the book and you're just like, yeah, that was good. It has like elements of like both of those things. Sorry, this is a clip after all of that was just filmed, because I think I realized what I was trying to say here. And that is that this book really is a book about friendship. And when you have a book that deals with themes like friendship or relationships, and these characters go through hell together, at the end of the book, it leaves a big impact on you, and it tugs at your heartstrings, and it like kind of sits with you. And this book definitely does that. So it's not just like a good, solid horror novel, but it also deals with real themes that we all experience, and has a big impact, in my opinion. This is definitely one that if you are into horror and you're fine with gory things, like, go for it. But if you are not somebody who is normally into that, this may be a little intense for you. And or if you do want to read it, I definitely recommend it. Definitely a good book, but I would definitely look up some like trigger warnings. Alright, so we have officially made it through our vampy Valentine's Day journey. Thank you for joining me. I just really quickly wanted to wrap up some quick final thoughts about each book before ending the video. So let's go ahead and do that. Carmilla. I feel like this really truly is a classic for a reason, and like I said, I am a Carmilla stan. I'm so glad that I finally read this. It was the perfect book, not video, to kick off the video with. And just, yeah, it's a classic for a reason. Definitely the most intense, kind of atmospheric book out of the three. The perfect one to curl up with on a rainy day if you want some good, like, gothic, vampy vibes. This is the book for you. So yeah, definitely enjoyed this book. Perfect book to start with. Next we have Vampires of El Norte. This book I feel like is the most solid as far as fitting my interests and usually the type of book that I gravitate towards. The writing, the descriptions, the characters, the plot. I feel like it's just the most solid. Yeah, I feel like it's the most solid for like me as far as what I like in a book. And it was definitely fun. I enjoyed the historical fiction aspects of it, and I enjoyed, as I described, comparing the monstrous kind of creature vampires as well as the human vampires in this story. So, this definitely was a fun one to read. And finally, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This book was definitely the most fun and the most gory. I didn't think I was going to like this one as much as I did, but I actually really enjoyed this one. This one was just, like I said, the most fun. It was fun, it was gory, it was a really great horror novel. It just like met me where I was at, you know what I mean? Like, it just, the mood that I was in when I started this one, it just was perfect. So I think that's why I liked it more. It was fun and definitely a great book to end the video on. So once again, thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope that you have an amazing Valentine's Day. I will see you next time.